All right, guys, so standard 19, we are now taking everything you know about graphs and going backwards. So instead of me giving you an equation that you have to graph, I give you the graph or information about it and you have to write the equation. Okay, so let's look at number 1. All right, guys, up here. Okay, so the first one, I'm telling you it has to be a sine equation. I give you the amplitude of 3, your vertical shift is up 4, tell you the period, and tell you the phase shift. The only one of these that requires any work before we just put it in the equation is the period. Okay, the period is pi over 2, but pi over 2 does not get plugged into our equation. Do you guys remember what the period in general is equal to for a sine graph? 2 pi over b. So what I have to do is set 2 pi over b equal to pi over 2 so that I can find the b value that actually gets plugged into my equation. Okay. So to solve this, I would just cross multiply. I'd have 4 pi equals pi times b. So guys, what's b going to equal? 4. Okay, so we need that. We now have everything we need to write the equation. If we are writing an equation, you have to start with a y equals or an f of x equals. Okay, you've got to have an equal sign there. All right, it says the amplitude is 3, so what am I going to start my equation with? A 3. Okay, we found a b value, right? That was 4. Then in parentheses, I have x, and it says the phase shift is right by pi. So how do I show that? Minus pi, right? And then also a vertical shift. It says up 4, so what am I going to do? Plus 4 at the end. Okay. Not too bad? Try number 2 for me. This one's a cosine equation. See if you guys can write that equation. Talk to each other after you've written it. See if you agree. Compare with your neighbors, see if you guys have the same equation. For the one, I would write it in factored form just so it's easy to see the shift. If you don't want to do that, you can say delete it as long as you disregard All right, let's see how you did. Chris, what's your equation?
Y equals -3 cos x plus 3 over 4 plus 3 over 4 pi in parentheses minus 5.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. All right, reflect over the x-axis, so that's where the negative comes from, amplitude of 3, period, no b-value to solve for there. Left 3 pi over 4, so that's why we say plus 3 pi over 4. Down 5 is minus 5 at the end. Not too bad when they give you all the information. Okay, let's jump down. And now we're going to do this from a graph. So now you have to come up with the information. So let's look at number 5. All right. We need to find some things. You basically need to find everything that was listed for you up above. So what is the highest this graph goes? Like, what's the maximum? Okay. What is the minimum? -4. So where does that put the midline?
Right on the axis.
Yes, right at 0 on the x-axis, I think is what you're saying. Okay. I can find my amplitude from this then. How far is it from the midline to the top of the graph? Okay, 4. Do you guys see this as a sine or a cosine graph? We can write it both ways, but what do you think it looks like? I would agree, sine. Okay. We have to find the period of this graph. So with what's drawn there, is that one cycle of the graph or is it more than one? Okay, so you need to figure out what one length of the graph is. So if I trace it in blue here, do you guys see how that is one period of the graph? Yeah, and it looks like it's at 6 pi, right? Okay, is 6 pi what I plug into my equation? No, I have to set up 2 pi over b equals 6 pi.
How is it one continuous line if there's going to be the asymptote?
It's not an asymptote.
Other than,
Sine and cosine do not have asymptote.
yeah.
Wait, with those, how would you know if it's sine or cosine? If it's shifted vertically?
We're going to write it both ways. Usually one looks easier. Like, do you see why this one I'm writing sine first? Okay. On your assessment, what I'll probably do is tell you, like if this was the graph on your quiz, I'd say, write the cosine equation for this graph. Okay. So I'll tell you which one to write. I'm probably not going to pick the easy one. But we'll get there. Yeah. It's to make sure you understand the shifts. If I let you do just the one that it looks like, I don't know if you actually understand the shifting. Does that make sense? All right, let's look at, did you guys solve for B?
Yeah.
What'd you get? 1/3, excellent. Okay, so in my equation, I know I have to have a 1/3. Now, if I'm seeing it as sine, is there a phase shift?
No.
No, because it starts right at the midline on the y-axis. Okay. What about vertical shift? Remember, the vertical shift is the midline. So wherever the midline is, that is your vertical shift. It's a 0, right? So there's no vertical shift. Okay. Now we're going to try it as a cosine equation. So this is, most of it stays the same. You just have to have a phase shift. So if I'm doing cosine, is the amplitude going to change? No, that's still 4. The b value is still 1/3. We just have to figure out where the graph is going. So what you have to think about is on the y-axis for the parent graph of cosine, where is the dot? On the y-axis. It's up. right? It's a maximum,
So it's internal 2 pi.
not quite. So normally it's right on the y-axis. So we have to figure out how far did it go. I see this is the next maximum, right? So I got to figure out what that shift is. I can see that it's to the right. So I'm going to say minus something. Let's think about your tick marks here. I'm going to redraw this down below just so you can see it better. You told me the period is 6 pi, right? Okay. What are the other labels going to be if I were graphing this? What's going to be in the middle? 3 pi. What's this first one going to be? No. Right? I don't even care what the third label is, because if you look at the graph, it has done this. Correct? So how far over did it shift? 3 pi over 2. Guys, they're always evenly spaced like that, okay? This midline point is always halfway in between the two endpoints. The maximum is halfway in between the two midline points. Like they always, you can just divide it by 2 to get the next mark over. So our equation here would be x minus 3 pi over 2. It's harder with the shift, I know. Questions on that one? Yeah.
I was shifting 3 pi over 2. The period is 6 pi. Why are you changing the period?
Period 6 pi, right? Redraw all of those just so you can see them again. What would the tick marks be?
2 pi, 4 pi.
If it was 8 pi over the period, you'd be right.
Oh, so this graph is wrong.
No. They didn't label all of the tick marks that we normally label. It's not shifted over 2 pi.
Oh,
You have to think about knowing the period is 6 pi. You know that halfway through the graph should be 3 pi.
Yeah, I see.
And then halfway to that point should be 3 pi over 2. So if you look up here, they're not all labeled. But this is 0, this one's 6 pi, 3 pi, 3 pi over 2, right? You see all of them?
Yeah, I see what happened.
Like where you have to think about it? Yes.
This one's correct.
So you gotta think. Okay. All right, let's try again. You guys try 6 for me. What does it look like? What would be the easier route? Cosine. Okay, good. So try it as a cosine first. If you get that one done, then go ahead and do it as a sine. If not, we'll go through both of them together, okay? it's
Six of them.
do you see how it has a maximum on my axis? That's. You can do it as 9. You're supposed to. I would do it as 9.
Still be so focused. Right?
Why just get a 6 for 1 cycle?
All the way down.
Okay, but this one, graph goes.
But I think we need to go.
So minus 2 times.
It really is.
Well, yeah.
So it's fun for me.
You might be wrong if we did it.
No.
As long as it's right, it's fine. And I know what it's, like, I know the other. Oh, you distributed, right? Sorry, I was not looking at it. No. If you want it to be fine, if you can shift to here, then you need it. Do you see how it is? Or you can shift it. Or you can shift it backwards. All right, let's go through them. There's lots of options. Oh, maybe one for right key. You can look and see if either of those are the one you need. If not, I'll find it for you. Okay. All right, guys, let's look at 6. So, are we okay? Looks like it goes -2. So did we start with 2 cosine? Okay, the period of this graph. Guys, they graphed for you more than one period. A maximum to the next maximum. That is one cycle of the graph, okay? So it looks to me like the period is 4 pi. Okay? you are setting up 2 pi over b equals 4 pi. What does that make b? 1/2. Okay, we need that. That's one equation. The cosine equation, there's no shifting. You could do a shift if you really feel the need and say write 4 pi, like minus 4 pi, but you don't have to. Okay, sine. Lots of options with sine. The 2 stays the same. The 1/2 stays the same. Okay, do you guys see how I could shift all the way over here to 3 pi and then it would look like sine? So that's one option. So minus 3 pi. You certainly could have gone left just by pi and you'd have the right thing. So x plus pi. You could have flipped the graph, so a negative in front, and then gone right by pi. Okay, so there are lots of choices for how you want to shift.
I'm confused. You're going right 3 pi? Where are you already?
Think about original sine starts right there where that smiley face is, right? So we are saying that that is going all the way over to there. And doesn't it look like the sine graph then after it?
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. So from the original, where did I go to turn it into the sine graph? So you could have gone there, you could have gone left by pi. That would have made it work. Or you could have gone right by pi and flipped it. It's saying, what did you do to the original graph to turn it into this graph?
Okay.
Does that help?
So you're not like going back.
Right. Okay. All right, how'd we do on that one? Pretty good? Getting there? All right, let's try again. Let's do, turn the page for me. Let's try number 1 on the next page. Let's do this one together. Okay, does that look like sine or cosine to you? Looks like cosine to me. And I see a maximum of 1. Minimum of what? Is that a negative 5?
Yeah.
So where does that put your midline?
Negative.
Okay?
Oh, wait, no.
Not negative 3.
Wait. Negative 2.
Yeah, guys, you can always just average your maximum and minimum. So what's 1 plus negative 4? I'm sorry, negative 5, and then divided by 2? You'll be at negative 3. No. 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4, and then divided by 2 is negative 2. Your midline is the average of the maximum. You subtract. The amplitude is 3. Good job. Excellent. Laugh, I'm just worried. Okay, so amplitude of 3, we okay with that? All right, if I look at this graph, maximum to maximum, that should be 1 cycle of the graph. So what is the period of this? 2 pi. So what does that mean as far as b value? 1, so we don't really have to write anything. If I'm doing cosine, there is no phase shift, so it's just 3 cosine of x. Is there a vertical shift on this one?
Yeah.
Yes, where's it going? Minus 2, okay. So there is a cosine equation for it. Let's do the sine equation together. Leave the 3 alone. Sine, we don't have a b value. The minus 2 at the end is the same. It is just that phase shift, okay? Normally, you are on the midline on the y-axis. So where has it gone? How far?
I mean plus.
Plus, what'd you say?
Pi over 2.
Okay, I could do that. I could do plus pi over 2. What else could I do? What if I wanted to go to the right? How far should I go? Wouldn't I need to go all the way over there? How far is that? 3 pi over 2. That would put you here. And then doesn't that look like the sine graph after it?
Why are you there?
You said plus pi over 2. That means left by pi over 2. Normally sine, like your parent graph for sine, starts like it does that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am trying to figure out basically what happened to this dot, right? I don't know how else to say that dot. Okay? Wouldn't you agree that that's that dot? Yeah? Okay. You just needed more smiley face. Did anybody do -3 sine and say x minus pi over 2? Probably not, but you could. Okay, it's all the same. Let's try. We're turning the page again, guys. Sorry. Only about 10 minutes left. Try 6 for me. Oh, that's a lot of smiley faces. There you go. Try 6. Looks like a sine, right? Write it as a sine and a cosine. Got to practice both. Sine first, then think about it as cosine. What I will do is, like if I was a problem, I can say that I'll make one harder. Harder one. Because I want to see if you understand the shapes. Do you think that's It has to be able to go from maximum to maximum. But this maximum to maximum. Maximum to minimum. Right, like from there to there. Yeah, or you might go, well, let's go 2 times. Like if you see that this is halfway correct. So let's go.
Oh,
Just take the video.
oh, is it just pi?
And we got
Just pi? Wait, but then you're
no, plus what, 3 pi.
You make it 30 plus 5. Maybe 3
Yeah.
I'm just understanding.
There is a B value and there's not a shift down. So if there was a vertical shift, there's not. So let's just figure out the B value here. The period's not just 2 pi. I'm not graphing the entire thing. Yes. You want me to look at something?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, hold on. There's a B value. Yeah. So think about a sine or a cosine graph. If I graph sine, that's one full period of the graph, right? Looks to me like from 0 to 2 pi is only this part of the graph, right? It doesn't have like a maximum and a minimum back to the midline. So the period is not 2 pi. It's 4 pi.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that make B equal? 1/2, right? Okay. So if I'm doing this as a sine, stretched by 3, right? There's my sine equation, okay? Cosine, what you have to think about with your shift. Guys, the parent graph of cosine, it has a maximum on the y-axis, right? So how far over am I shifting to get to this maximum? Pi, so it is x minus pi. Okay? From the y-axis, I went this way, right? It's not how do you turn this graph back into the original, it's what did the original do to become this one. Does that make sense? Sure. All right, guys, I think we have time for one more. Let's do 5. Five shouldn't take you too long. Try 5 for me. We've got just a couple minutes left. Try number 5. Write it both ways. Okay, Mac, what was your question?
It was about the period. I had this.
Okay. So 4 pi is the period, but that's the
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah, because it's 2 pi would be 5.
Said she's high. Like, how do you find it? Oh.
Shouldn't matter.
Whoa.
Where's the next one? You're too high on this one.
Wait,
I could go. I go from the y-axis. Alright. Okay guys, there's the cosine equation. Let's see, I want to go all the way over to here. That's got to be 3 pi over 4. Yes. Okay, guys, homework's kind of weird. Go back to the beginning of this packet. This, like what I gave you today. Alright, let's do... So on the first page, we had skipped 3 and 4, so do those two. Guys, go through and circle this right now. Put away other work. I don't know what some of you guys are working on, but it is not math. 3 and 4, 7 and 8. So the ones we didn't do on the front page you need to do. Same on the next page. You need to do 2, 3 and 4. What do you think you're going to do on the next page? 7 and 8. And then guys, you can stop. We will talk about the tangent and cotangent, secant, cosecant, all that stuff next time, okay?